The modern healthcare system won't help you heal.
It's designed to keep you sick and dependent on drugs.
If you want to get well, you gotta get out of the system.
You found Predictive Health Clinic.
Join us as we get well and stay healthy.
Thank you for joining us, folks. This is the Predictive Health Clinic. My guest today is Nayiri Mississian. Nayiri, real quickly, because what you do is pretty specific, real quickly, just give us a quick bio of yourself.
So I'm a fully accredited metabolic health practitioner. So I work as a health coach. I work with diabetics, but also non-diabetics. My focus is chronic illness reversal where possible. I'm passionate about metabolic health. I'm passionate about empowering people with the right knowledge so they can take charge of their health.
Very good. All right, so let's get into it. As you know, we have 9 questions here at the Predictive Health Clinic with the goal of giving our listeners specific actionable steps they can take to help them either recover from or never get sick. So question 1, what specific health-related issue do you want to talk about today?
Today, Jack, I would like to talk about type 1 diabetes.
Good. And why is that your chosen subject?
It's my chosen subject because I am a type 1 diabetic. I've lived with type 1 diabetes since I was 5 years old. So that's 46 years now. I work with type 1 diabetics, and they're some of my favorite friends, I have to say, because there's a lot in common that I have with them. So I'm passionate about empowering type 1 diabetics so they have the right knowledge to manage their disease.
I have a question about, if we have time, I'm going to circle back and give you a 10th question. And if I fail to do that, just remind me. All right. So type 1 diabetes, what's the biggest popular misconception about type 1 diabetes?
I think most people mix the two most common types of diabetes, and that's type 2 diabetes, which is the more popular, the more common, popular, that kind of makes sense too, but the more common type of diabetes, and they mix the type 2 with the type 1 diabetes. So I think the biggest misconception coming from there is that, oh, if you're diabetic, you should be able to reverse it. And maybe what caused it was your dietary choices. So just work on reversing it. That's a big misconception about type 1 diabetes.
And the truth then is?
No, the truth is type 1 diabetics do not produce any insulin. And we know what happens to people without insulin. They will basically die. And so type 1 diabetics need to take insulin injections for the rest of their life. It was not caused by dietary or lifestyle choices. It is an autoimmune disease, and it cannot be cured or reversed.
The only possible treatment is insulin injection. Is that correct?
With a treatment, what keeps you alive is insulin. But of course, diet will play a big role in managing the blood sugars better.
One of the things that I've learned interviewing type 1 diabetics is how incredibly challenging it is to manage your blood sugar and your insulin levels. So I know you have departed from the mainstream in terms of what type 1 diabetics can do to make the whole process of managing their blood sugar and their insulin levels more manageable. Can you unpack that a little bit?
So the mainstream approach, whether you're diabetic or not, just eat whatever you want and and suffer the consequences, basically. They don't quite put it that way across to you, but they make it out when you're first diagnosed as if you are diabetic, but you can just ignore your disease, just pretend you're not, take your insulin, eat what you want. But of course, that's for anyone who is not diabetic. We would not recommend, hey, go and eat tons of wheat and tons of pasta and junk food. But this is basically what they tell diabetics who cannot metabolize glucose to just eat whatever they want, as if insulin is magically going to solve the problem. We know from experience that insulin does not magically solve the problem. When you are constantly poisoning your body with glucose and more glucose, there's no amount of insulin that can actually deal with that without causing serious issues. Cardiovascular disease, for example, is very common among diabetics. Blindness, neuropathy, nephropathy, all of these are very common. So no amount of insulin they recommend that you take to cover the junk food you're eating is ever going to be the solution for your disease.
All right. So let's dive a little deeper. What do you recommend? I know this is the big coaching that you do, and we're kind of trying to keep this short and sweet, but within those guidelines, let's talk about it.
So what I recommend, type 1 diabetes is probably the only disease. I haven't been able to think of another disease that needs hourly management by the person who has the disease. So it's probably the only disease out there that is not going to be managed well if you visit your doctor once a year, once every 6 months, and then they put your dose up, or they just decrease your dose, or change your, I don't know, blood pressure medication to another brand or another form, and then say, that's it, I'll see you in six months. A type 1 diabetic has to manage their own blood sugar because their endo's not living with them full time. Their endo's not going to be able to make hourly decisions for them. The nutritionist or the diabetes nurse or the diabetes dietitian is not going to be able to make those decisions for you. So my passion and mission has been to empower type 1 diabetics with the confidence, with the right knowledge, so that they can manage their disease. Because I'll tell you, Jack, it is a disease that's going to require thorough management, even on an hourly basis.
So let's talk about the way type 1 diabetics are traditionally told they can live and compare that to the more effective choices that you've learned to make for yourself and for your clients, coach your clients to make.
So traditionally, they're told, just eat the carbohydrates, anything you want, basically. Don't limit anything, and just take that set amount of insulin to cover your carbohydrates. But we know that doesn't work. It doesn't work with the majority of type 1s. So my approach is to teach people how to use insulin smartly, because insulin is a potent drug. And this is why in this country too, in the US, you cannot walk into a pharmacy and buy insulin without a prescription from your doctor. It's the same in the UK, by the way, not in Canada for some reason, because I was in Canada and you could just go in and buy insulin, which I welcome, or part of me welcomes that. We should be able, because it is a life-saving drug. But let's face it, it's also a potent drug if not used properly. So type 1 diabetics, my mission is to teach diabetics about the differences between different insulin types and how to combine them, perhaps, to optimize their management, how to use insulin smartly so that they are not experiencing dangerously high blood sugars or dangerously low blood sugars. It all comes down to your diet, obviously, minimizing those carbohydrates and the junk foods, or eliminating them completely. Diet makes a big difference on blood sugars. But even on the best diet, you still have to take insulin. You have to take insulin for protein. You have to take insulin to cover your fat. So even if you're not eating any carbs, Not even vegetables or salads or roasted cauliflower. You're not eating any vegetables. You still need insulin. And you still need to know how much to take. You still need to know what time to take it and what type of insulin to take to cover your food and your background or basal insulin. So that's a lot of teaching. That's a lot of learning for someone
Isn't that
who's
something
really
they're taught?
No, but I was never taught that. Completely never. I had to research and find out and talk to other type 1s in our community, and we learn from each other. And of course, I have to give credit to Dr. Bernstein, who wrote the book Diabetes Solution, because there's a lot of wisdom in there. So we figured out a better way to manage blood sugars, and this is what I want to teach people who are
For our listeners who are type 1 diabetics and have basically been fed the standard line of you don't have to worry about changing your diet, eat whatever you want, just make sure you get the right amount of insulin or make sure you take your insulin shot when you're supposed to at the amount you're supposed to. What would you say to this person um, to help them recognize how their own life is not as robust and thriving as it could be if they were managing it better? What are the signs? What changed when you changed the way you managed it?
I think I would first of all get people to reflect on their own health themselves, because they have to realize, people need to realize, you can give them all the lectures you want, but people need to look at their own life and their health and realize that there's something wrong. I would tell type 1s out there who are following the standard advice, if your blood sugar fluctuations are in a very tight range between 70, I would say between 70 and 108, despite eating anything you want, then, and you're happy with your overall health, then perhaps there isn't much we can do here, because this is the whole goal, right? I don't care what you eat. If you're managing well, and you're happy with all the pastas, even though nutritionally it's deficient, but it's people who have to come up with that realization that, hey, maybe I can replace the pasta with something more nutrient dense. Maybe I can have a steak instead, for example. But if someone's happy with what they're doing, there isn't much I can tell them. However, the chances are that if you find any type 1 diabetic from down the street, I just met one at the grocery store yesterday doing shopping. He was wearing a sensor like me, and his shopping trolley or cart was full of carbohydrates and pasta, and he had no idea. So we had a conversation, and it was an eye-opening conversation for him. And I only had that conversation with him because he was a young guy, and he showed interest. He showed interest. He kept asking me questions, and I was there for a short time. And we spent a full hour having a discussion on how to manage it differently. If the willingness to learn and to do something better or different is there, then I would tell them, hey, change your diet. Minimize the insult, the foods that are causing insult to your body, which is basically carbohydrate. I mean, I don't want to put all carbohydrates in the same, because it depends on.
What'd you tell this guy? How'd you answer this guy?
So I said, look, I mean, pasta is like glucose. Pasta or any wheat product will right away, but at the touch of your saliva, will start breaking down into glucose. So you're basically putting glucose in your body, and you're already drenched in glucose. Your body cannot even metabolize glucose. So you can actually have some other foods. We talked, I mean, I told him, look, all those vegetables. He was asking questions. He said he had no idea, and he had a ratio of how much insulin to take for how many carbohydrates. He realized it wasn't working, but he'd never heard of an alternative. Apart from, he was familiar with the word keto. And then, of course, that was kind of, when you type keto, Jack, on Google, type 1 diabetes and keto, it will be a big no. It's going to take you to an early grave, because keto means ketones, and ketones will kill you. Of course, that's not the right information. So he hadn't even considered that he could live without the bread and the pasta and the desserts. And so I hope that I was able to change his life. He was only 30s. I gave him my number as well. And what a wonderful conversation. These things are very rare because sometimes I look at people and I wish that they would do something different. But of course, they're not willing to change. So what you really are going to change is your diet primarily, because you're going to minimize the insult. And the insult being all the processed foods, or most 90% of processed foods, which are full of sugars, carbohydrates, and of course, seed oil. So you're going to minimize those, eliminate them, just remove them from your diet. They don't have any nutritional value anyway. And have more of the foods that contain nutrients like meats, fish, chicken, vegetables. So I don't even like using the word carbohydrate as such because, of course, I mean, broccoli has carbohydrates, right? Your salad, a whole bowl of salad will probably contain about 10 grams of carbohydrate, but the insult from that bowl of salad is not going to be the same, despite the carbohydrates being the same, is not going to be the same as 10 grams of carbohydrates coming from pure pasta, for example. And so it's a bit like the calorie thing, right? Not all carbs are the same. So it's not
Sure.
the carb that's the problem. It's the impact on your blood sugar that's the problem. So rapid acting carbohydrates are a no. Your body cannot deal with it. I mean, if it did, fine, I would eat them too, but our body cannot deal with it. We cannot artificially inject insulin to deal with that much glucose intake. Change of diet and learn how to use your insulin properly.
Talk about that. It's been a while since you and I have talked, and I'll confess, I'm drawing a blank on the guidelines there. So talk to me as if I was that guy who was an utterly ignorant type 1 diabetic who was operating under the standard.
Just as with any other medication, we have different varieties of hypertension medication, for example. Some are in more sort of dense doses, and some have a different sort of action profile. I mean, the different ones have different side effects, for example, right? The insulin is the same. There are different types of insulin available to us, and each type of insulin plays a different role. They don't all do the same thing. Fast-acting insulin, for example, might peak or start reducing your blood sugar in as little as 20 minutes. Rapid, fast, super fast insulins. Whereas a long-acting insulin that people usually take to keep their blood sugar steady all day long, that doesn't have that rapid action profile. So it's going to keep you steady for about 24, some more, some less, but 24, roughly 24 hours. So there are different types of insulin out there. As a patient, as a type 1, you need to recognize, first, you need to understand what's available to you, what's in the market, and what's best for you. You need to tell your endo, this is the insulin, I have done my research, and this is the insulin I believe will benefit me more. It's not up to your endo. Your endo can recommend something to you. You're not forced to take it. If you don't agree with it, you don't have to take it, because endocrinologists often act, it's okay, so let me just share all insurance problems or whatever it is here in the US, or let me just change it for you without any discussion with their patients. Their patients don't understand why their insulin was changed, and they don't understand. Now, that's the harmful part. They don't understand that the new insulin their endo put them on is not identical in its action profile as the insulin that they were on previously. It may be cheaper, it may be more expensive, whatever it is, whatever the endo's reasons, they're not the same. As a patient, you have to understand what insulin is doing and accordingly inject the right dose at the right time to meet your daily needs. That's a lot to learn and process if you're
Yeah,
newly.
it is. Well,
However,
where do they start?
it's key though. I mean, it's key. I always start with the diet. I always start with the diet because, as I said previously, I mean, there is no insulin out there that's going to meet your body's needs and normalize your blood sugars when you are eating processed junk foods, high carbohydrate foods, right? I mean, no insulin can do the job, right? If you fix the diet, now we can talk. We can look at your insulin and we can see how we can tweak and adjust and maybe even change. But you have to know, also have to know what's good about the type of insulin your endo's given you and what side effects, because like any medication, some insulins have side effects too. We never even talk about these. For example, there's a type of insulin that's made of a more acidic solution. It's the common Lantus, for example, that most people use. And if you hit a vein by mistake when you're injecting, that's going to crash your blood sugars almost instantly. That's something. It's not my job. I shouldn't be in a position where I'm sharing this information with my patients for the first time.
Yeah.
I know you're using Lantus, but just be aware of it. Your endo should have told you that. So this is where my approach is different. And of course, I'm not the only one in this space who's working with type 1 diabetics. There are many others who you're probably familiar with, Jack, but we're all doing the same thing. We want to empower patients to take charge of their health, to know exactly what to do when they have a high, when they have a low. In fact, how to prevent the highs and lows, how to minimize the highs and lows, if you like. This is a disease that needs management, like on an hourly basis. You can't take your eyes off it. So you need to understand insulin because it's key. Diet part is the easier part. The key is insulin.
Well,
Use
you
it
mentioned
appropriately.
you want people to have done their research. Where do they start in terms of research? Now I assume if you know, oh, I'm using this brand of this dose of this insulin, that kind of information, you can track down the official stuff. But what kind of resources do you direct people to start educating themselves about the realities of managing their own type 1 diabetes?
I usually refer people to my own group, my own Facebook group, but also to Alice and Hershidy's Diverge, their Facebook group. They put out great information. Type 1 Grit group, they put out great information and resources. So there are some groups out there that provide free advice and free sort of resources. They are all out there. Maybe we need to unite forces. But I have high hopes for Dr. Ken Berry's new diabetes society. So
I
I have high
didn't realize he was
hopes.
doing that.
So very unhappy, obviously, or disappointed with the advice of American Diabetes Association. They created with Dr. Westman, Dr. Ken Berry, Dr. Tony Hampton, and a few other people. They created a whole brand new society, and they called it American Diabetes Society. And I have high hopes for them. I really do. They are going to be the organization that are not receiving funds from pharmaceutical companies or food manufacturing companies. So they will be able to put out, it's brand new, but they're doing a lot of work. So they will be able to, once all the resources are up on their website, I definitely will refer people to their website.
Okay, good. We'll make sure that we've got links on the show notes for the show here, but that's a good start. Let's talk about some of your work in particular. I like to ask two questions of my guests, uh, one positive, one negative. What's the biggest or most common complaint you hear? And what's one of the most common compliments that you get?
Okay, so fortunately, none of my clients has complained directly about the service that I provide. Okay, so I'm really blessed. I really feel myself blessed. So I have many good testimonials. They're all on my website. People are welcome to go and check those. However, there is a common complaint that I hear from people who come to me, and it's about their endocrinologists, about their own physicians, and about how ignorant their physician is about this whole concept of therapeutic carbohydrate restriction. They get frustrated with their own physicians and then they come to me. So that's
Well,
the
that's a
part.
good place to be, is frustrated with the person who is supposed to be the expert who clearly demonstrates a lack of expertise. That's a good place to start.
But the compliment are really, especially when I'm working with type 1 diabetics, especially when I'm sitting with the parents of type 1 diabetic children. Like I genuinely, Jack, you won't believe it's I treat these people like family members, like my own children. I put my heart and soul into what I do.
I can believe
And
that.
people notice that. People notice that because my services don't end. They should. They should end. My service should end at the end of a session, but I take it beyond, almost with every single person. I take it, beyond that, and I check in on them and everything. And people say, thank you for genuinely caring about us.
I would assume that either being a sufferer yourself or having a child that suffers from type 1 diabetes makes you feel as if you are all part of a community. In my world, in marketing and advertising, we call it an affinity group, although affinity is not exactly the right word for this particular situation. Is that the case? I mean, when you met this guy in the grocery store, was there like an instant connection there that isn't there normally for most folks?
I think, all type 1s, regardless of whatever dietary approach they're following, whether they are on a low carbohydrate diet for better health or whether they are following the standard guidelines, all type 1s will tell you one thing. When I see someone across the road or wherever it may be wearing a CGM, or even more, wearing an insulin pump. I think that this is my pump here. I just run to them and say, hello, sister, hello, whatever. So almost everyone just gets that instant joy because you feel like, here's another one like me. Yeah, I often get that too. So I often get that and approach people and we start chit-chatting. And I don't bring up the diet part, but it's good. Like, how long have you been type 1? And, oh, you're looking too good for a type 1. Take good care of yourself. You're going to look good too in 10 years' time. But, these are the conversations that we always get delighted seeing another type 1 wearing a pump or even a CGM. So there is that feeling of connection, definitely. Now, even within the type 1 community, if other people are doing the same thing as you are doing with regards to their diet, then that's even a tighter group. That's even a closer connection. I mean, people who are doing the same as I am doing, I genuinely look at them as brother and sister. And the interesting part is people think here we're coaches, so we always have the answers to everything. The truth is, authors do it too. Regardless of how many books you've published, you write a book and you get your friend who's an author too to give you their first review, right? Feedback. We do the same too. Sometimes I just send all my details to a friend and say, can you have a look? What am I doing? Does everything, I mean, I don't want to be under the false impression that I'm doing everything right. And they go and suggest something, and we always appreciate that second, third opinion. So yes, this is like a sisterhood, brotherhood, if you like.
All right, we've come to my favorite question every episode, the famous 8-word answer. If you could deliver your message and it had to be distilled down so that it would fit on a billboard, and typically a billboard can't have more than 8 words and still be fully perceived as we drive by at 60 miles an hour. 8 words or less, Nayiri. What's that message?
My 8 words. Here we go. Your diabetes is your responsibility, not your doctor's.
Wow. Well done. Well done. As an ad writer, I commend you. That will get attention and hold attention.
Thank you. I had to work on it.
All
It
right.
was mine initially.
Well, and I understand that. Like I said, I know what it's like to try to put the maximum message into the minimum number of words. Folks are going to want to get more information. Folks are going to want to get more information. Where do we send them?
My website. It has links to all my social media platforms, and it has my biography in there as well if people want to find out more. So my website is www.lowcarbandfasting.com.
Low carbon fasting. I
.com.
did not remember that. That's normally the kind of thing I would recall. Was that your website when I talked to you a couple of years ago?
It was always my website. It was actually the title of my book, which I put to one side and started the coaching practice. But
All right. Nayiri Mississian, low carb fasting, lowcarbandfasting.com. Thanks for being a guest here on the Predictive Health Clinic. Folks,
thank you very much.
we welcome your feedback. We'll talk to you next time.
Are you a healthcare practitioner eager to escape the grind of corporate medicine?
Are you ready to make a massive difference in your world? Listen up.
We are the Wizard of Ads.
For 40 years, we've created dominant brands in a variety of industries.
Now, we're bringing our magic to healthcare.
We're seeking one extraordinary healthcare practitioner to help us build the first national brand in direct primary care.
If you think you could be that person, let's talk.
Email us at health@wizardofads.com.
Tell us why you think you're the one.
That's health@wizardofads.com.